I think they were about 60 feet from top of casing, so pretty good.
That's a lot of storage.
So they'll.
David,
they are.
Reporting.
Is it time?
It is.
It is. All right, people, let's come to order. This is the Enfield Planning Board, December 4, 2024. We are in the DPW conference room and also on Microsoft Teams. Attendance from my left.
Linda Jones.
Eric Russell and Kylie.
I'm David Frack.
Brad Rich, Tim Jennings.
Art Goshawtz, alternates. Bill Griffin, alternate. Bob Taylor, staff.
Whitney Banker, staff and alternate.
And our guests tonight in the audience.
I am Dan Reagan.
Renee Thiel with the Upper Valley Lakes Columbia Regional Planning Commission.
Okay. Bit of bad news. We got a email from the HOP grant people. They had an awful lot of applications. And it seems that they have cut us and I believe everybody else down to $30,000. They
Well,
have,
we get to resubmit though, right?
yeah, we have to submit a new grant application. They've given us a little bit of guidance, reduced the scope of work tremendously. And their application has to be in by, I believe, the 18th of this month. So we don't have an awful lot of time. Not we, I was, tied up in Concord this afternoon and didn't get back until about 5. Brad and Tim and Rob conducted interviews with 2 of the respondents to our RFQ. And my suggestion, rather than go through our entire agenda, is that we interview Lake Sunapee Regional Planning first and let her get on her way after that.
Come on up, got a spot for you.
And then we'll proceed with the agenda and then discuss where do we go from here in regards to the hot grid. So,
Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
you guys, conducted the interview, with the other 2 potential candidates.
And only one of them cried.
Well, good.
Where's my tissue? I'll be right back.
So rather than mess up, what you folks have already done with my own version of conducting an interview.
Sure.
Why don't you and Tim, start it off?
Well, we'll start with Rob. He started off the others.
Okay,
Yes. This is Renee from the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission. We would basically have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the RPC.
Sure, yeah. So, again, my name is Renee Thiel. I've been with the Regional Planning Commission. It'll be 2 years in January, so just shy. I joined on with the Housing Navigator Grant project. So the last 2 years, solely been working kind of in the housing realm. 80% of my time has been focused on that. Along the other 20% has been assistance with other HOP projects that the RPC has consulted for. Sure many of you are probably aware of the RPC, but we serve 27 communities on the western side, all the way up from Orford, Lyme, all the way down to Charlestown, Ackworth, and around Wilmot, kind of is our easterly cutoff around towards Grafton.
Do you have sister corporations like yourself on the rest of the state?
Yes, so there are 9 regional planning commissions in the state. And so the state's kind of divided up into chunks. We have kind of a fairly good stretch along the westerly section, but yeah, so any other questions on the RPC?
Just get started on some.
Yeah, sure.
We generally answered or asked, some questions that Rob had provided. Here, I'll just pass it.
And I should say too, I apologize, I'm sorry to hear about the cutting down to 30,000.
So are we.
That's,
pass that?
oh, sure.
Can you, do you have any thoughts on, public engagement in terms of, the work that you would be doing? Is there such a thing as too much public involvement? What is your favorite, method in terms of, public engagement?
Sure, yeah. So the Housing Navigator, gives some background on that. The Invest New Hampshire, initiative was kind of took two funnels with the municipality. It was the Housing Navigator and then it was the HOP. So Housing Navigators were kind of set up. It was this new approach designed to kind of say, have someone be a support and a staff for community engagement and resident engagement, key stakeholders, employers in the towns. So there's 5 housing navigators in the state, and each of us kind of sat with the Regional Planning Commission, except for one with the city of Dover. And the reason is because I say all that, the importance of community engagement, especially when trying to rewrite or get things kind of changed and developing for the future, is a huge piece of the puzzle. And so in the last 2 years, we found great success through different community engagement strategies. And it's really kind of, each municipality has been a little bit different. I worked with the towns of Wilmot, Newbury, and New London specifically, and then again, HOP projects for a couple other towns. And sometimes when towns such as Wilmot doesn't have necessarily a hub, they don't have a lot of employers, it's hard to reach people. And sometimes at town, planning board meetings or select board meetings, you have kind of same voices being heard. And one of the key things that I've been working on is trying to ensure that all voices are heard and kind of getting voices that otherwise wouldn't be involved in the conversation involved and have their input. One of the strategies that we used was in Wilmot was kind of a solution to the puzzle, like how do we reach people, was the transfer station. And so I set up a table with some coffee and some tea and some, refreshments and a big poster board with just a general question of like, what would you like to see to kind of draw people in? And it was so much fun and to get to know other people and then also to hear from people who were like, I've been really meaning to come to a meeting. I just don't have time, or I have young kids in the elementary school and sports and this and that. But you know what? Like, yeah, I think that's important. And I'd like my voice, here's something that I would love to see in town. And they write it on a sticky note. And then we're able to compile it and come back to the boards and let them know the information of their residents. And so I think it's a very key piece of the puzzle. As far as how do you curtail or how do you kind of that level, right, of involvement and how robust. I think there's a few kind of, again, in Wilmot, they were running simultaneously. We had the Housing Navigator and the HOP grant going on at the same time. And with the HOP grants, it's really nice because with the RPC, you get the resources of all the staff. And so there's 8 full-time staff members. We have outlined in our RFQ a few of us that would be leads and then assistant position kind of planners as well. So that's kind of a well-rounded assistance there and tools that we can utilize. And when Wilmot, again, kind of leaning on that, but the outreach was a huge piece of the puzzle, again, because they wanted to hear all the voices. How do they get people involved and kind of help guide what they're going to change and propose and be involved? So when they go to ballot, they know what's being said. They're like, oh yeah, I remember talking to so-and-so at the transfer station, the planning board member or whoever, at the time. And that's what's on the ballot. I have an idea of it. I'm in agreement. And so they have kind of, again, a more contextual conversation to piece that with. And as we go through engagement processes, with Wilmot, again, we really kind of saw in the beginning certain demographics being reached and not others.
Right.
And so we were like, how can we improve this? Like we're keeping an eye on this. We're keeping an eye on who we're engaging with. How do we reach the others? So we did, one was, and the planning board mentioned and requested two, was like, we really want to make sure family involvement, that the adults, the parents who can't be here are a part of the conversation too, because they're the ones who are kind of that middle base, right? That are, have longevity in town as well. And so we found that capitalizing on already existing town events that are happening is a great area to capture those voices and to engage with folks. So we did a Halloween trick or treating event for their with their HOP grant, and you know, in the, I don't know if you're familiar with Wilmot, but in the flat, they are going to have trick or treating kind of happening anyways that night. And so we're like, let's make it kind of a little walking tour and set up a few spots, have a couple games for the kids to play, have some treats, and then also engage with the folks and parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles, and get their feedback and involvement in the process. And we saw a huge success, and that demographic that we were missing, we were able to really fill that gap.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That Navigator program, I'm not familiar with it. So you're
Mhm.
funded to be a navigator by,
So the Invest New Hampshire initiative that had the 5 million that was put in, there was technically that project grant has ended. Pretty much winded down this fall. It was a 2-year project to give support to municipalities in that resident feedback. But what the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission did was, when they built the scope and hiring for that position and the project, said, you know, we want to maintain and retain this knowledge. And so they wrote it so that the position was created. I was hired 75% of my time, or 80% of my time was working on that project, with 20% in other fields in order to retain and kind of for this purpose. So now I'm here, I've had 2 years of housing kind of knowledge engagement strategy. So the RPC wants to keep and retain that. For all of our municipalities.
What were some of the net results you think from that program for you?
Yeah, I think, again, kind of the getting creative in the solutions. You know, it's not one size cookie cutter for all the towns. Every town is so unique. That's what makes New Hampshire great. And that's, you know, that piece of it, along with being a kind of third party, being able to step back and engage with folks. It's not, you know, for some people in towns, it's like, oh, we hear from the same folks, or, you know, just this kind of different, but to be kind of a step removed and be the consultant working, that was kind of a really unique gain there as well.
Did the communities put forth any new zoning?
Yeah, so Wilmot, again, they had the HOP and the Navigator running, so theirs was a little more focused and stay a little more energy put to some things, but they did 2 ADUs, and that passed 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. And then they are working on and drafting conservation subdivision as well. And that was brought about from a lot of the resident engagement of saying, what do you like about your town, but what are you okay with seeing in housing? I'm okay with seeing increased density in housing, but I really do love the green space and open space. Okay, what tools can we pull? What levers can we see within the zoning to help create this and help maintain the character of the town for them? And conservation subdivision was one that kind of bubbled to the top, and the planning board was excited to kind of dive into. And they've been working really hard. They formed a subcommittee, and they've been working on drafting for that. And they're preparing for hopefully to go to ballot next spring.
are you guys still assisting with them?
We are a little bit through the circuit rider. So Wilmot has retained, the regional planning commissions also offer service of circuit rider, for planning staff for the towns. And so through the circuit rider, we're kind of just assisting a little bit, so many hours per month to kind of help with that.
So I heard you say that, you were very successful meeting people probably one-on-one at the transfer station in Wilmot and at the Halloween trick or treating. We of course have a transfer station, and we also have curbside pickup.
Mhm.
So I'm
Mm.
presuming that there's a large number of people in town
Mhm,
that don't visit the transfer station on a regular basis.
mhm,
How would you approach outreach
mhm.
for a community meeting?
Yeah,
That involves, 10, 20, 50 people,
yep.
whoever shows
Sure.
up.
Yeah, I know my colleague Tim and Ian and Toby had come recently for the Main Street
Mhm.
discussion, and so, that seemed to get some good success, and so part of it would be looking back to see what has been successful for the town and engagement, and building off of that, and so, maybe something like that again, and the location seemed to be a really good location, building off of that, advertising. I have a couple, grab that, so there's a few on the engagement specific, um, 2 packets that way. There's a couple different things there. 2 that way. This is, I think most of those in there are Wilmot's, pieces and parts, but, first page is gonna be like engagement summary and how we kind of track demographic for them, and then some other ways that we did advertising flyers, got information out there. Another one was the sticky dot exercise. You'll see we employed that at the election. So town meetings, if there are, we can captivate on that and have a staff person be there with a table set up and engage that way too. Again, that's a little more one-on-one and kind of gathering what's already existing. But for having those larger gatherings, I think kind of working off and building off of what's been successful thus far and getting the word out is probably the biggest thing, and changing up the times. So, being flexible and realizing, okay, a 6 o'clock may work, a 5 o'clock may work, or Saturday mornings at, 10:30 and have a brunch. And we often find if you have some food there, you'll also kind of gather some folks. So,
Yeah, we did all of that.
yeah, okay, yeah.
So I wanna make a comment that please don't take offense, because
Mhm.
it's certainly nothing meant by it. But I think I've heard a number of times the board, when we've thought about the regional planning commission as being our consultant, that, and here's the phrase I've heard a number of times, they're awfully young.
Mhm.
And maybe the executive director is probably the best person to address this question, so
Mhm.
don't feel like you have to,
Sure.
but it is something, I guess, as a perception
Mm,
that I think I'm fair to say the
Mhm.
board has some concern, and it will vary from member to member here.
Sure.
And what they meant by that, not exactly sure.
Mhm.
It could be that,
Mm,
okay, they're young, they don't have a lot of experience, and they're gonna give us this pie in the sky thing, and it hasn't been tested and tried, and,
Mhm.
that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Maybe they'll have more energy.
Yeah, so all to say,
Sure.
just pass that back to your people that might be a perception that they could attempt to address in some way
Mhm.
if we have discussions in the future.
Sure. Sure. I would, I guess, I don't want to speak too much. I think that's a good point. And then Megan would be here. She had a full commission meeting for the RPC this evening, so the schedule didn't line up. So apologies on that. I think one thing too that we try to bring is if we don't know the answers, or if we, maybe again, the kind of that experience resource, we have connections that we can kind of lean into and gather that. And in the last 2 years in the housing realm, having connections with New Hampshire Housing, building those relationships that I've been able to, and couple others have also done, and kind of having that relationship, I think is one thing that we can kind of tie into.
And I
But
would expect
I
that,
understand, yeah.
of course, yeah.
And I hope we can bring energy, and then also, but
The towns that you've worked with, have any of them, established or created form-based, zoning ordinance?
not yet at this point in time. It's been discussed, again, with some of like the village centers or things that exist today.
Mm.
The realization of that can't be created today, but why? You know, if you were doing maybe an outer layer or another kind of envelope around to kind of help keep the density, but encourage that similar pattern. So it's definitely been discussed amongst planning boards in some towns. But there's some hesitancy in some towns that have planning staff on stuff too. It's a lot to undertake. And so if you're to change all of it, or how do you do it incrementally?
Sure.
So,
If I could just expand on Tim's comment,
sure.
I think maybe another of our concerns is staff turnover at RPC. Those of us that have been here for a while have seen people come and people go, and our concern, or at least my concern, I don't want to speak for everybody on the board, is that we would have the same core group of people throughout our process, whether it's a 10-month process or a 2-year process. We would feel much more comfortable with a team that remains essentially the same. So if that's something you could bring back to
Yeah.
Megan as one of our concerns,
Yeah. Yeah.
we'd appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think again, I won't speak too much to that, but part of the goal too, I know that they've been working on is that the retention a little bit. And so creating that again, that housing navigator, while as a project, the ultimate goal was to retain and
Yeah.
keep that knowledge. So I think trying to, stride in that right direction there, but
Mhm.
understood.
Any other questions from board members?
My question is, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question, Brett.
I was thinking that. So in the community engagement, what do you find has been or is potentially a hindrance for the town that?
We had trouble reaching renters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was important that we reached them, and we,
Mhm.
quite
We blew
honestly, were not that successful.
Mhm.
We did pretty well in a lot of the other groups. I
Mhm.
think probably we did two things, in my opinion. This is all master plan stuff, but
Okay, yep.
we did, what do you call it? The farmer markets, that Enfield has, and we all sat at tables, in the hot sun, talking to
Mhm.
people. And, when you do that, you don't end up talking to very many people, but you have good conversations with the people you do talk to. So it was interesting. And then we ran just general sessions at night at, La Salette, or the buildings over at La Salette. And I'm not sure how many of those you ran,
I
but,
think we had 5 or 6.
and, not a lot of people, but we had 12, 16 people show up, 6 or 7 times or whatever we did, and that was also effective.
And we had people on Zoom as well, and that was during COVID,
Mhm.
or maybe just shortly after COVID, so.
Yeah.
That was a tough outreach.
Mhm.
But I like the idea of the transfer station. I mean, certainly a lot of people in Enfield go to the transfer station. It would be a way to get to people.
And what you hope is that at the transfer station, you may not be getting a ton of people because of what you mentioned, curbside pickup, but people you are getting hopefully is a good cross section.
Yeah.
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 We find that outreach is a two-way street, it's not, you're not just trying to pull stuff out of the public. You sort of have to bring stuff to them and sort of educate them, and sort of bring them up to speed and
Mhm.
say, well, this is our problem. What do you think the solution is, right? So
Absolutely.
and sometimes people may
You've
not
gotta
know
give them
that's
a
our problem.
framework, right? So they can
Yeah.
respond to it.
Right, right. And I think, yeah, that's a great point. And some of the, the openness of hearing from them, but again, providing that information, at the farmers markets that I had gone to and attended also, or some of the kind of more casual events, I had pocket guides with me and I just be like, hey, this is who I am. And this is what the town's working on. The planning board is looking at. Here's some information for you to take home. Can't look at it now. That's fine. My contact information's in the back. Happy to talk later. And there's some great conversations that led after that. And sometimes too, sometimes that kind of spreads throughout. So maybe you talk to that one person, but then they mention it to their relative or their friend down the road, and it kind of spreads a little bit that way. One thing on the renters, I'm glad that was brought up because that was kind of one of my big things as well in some of the towns. New London, especially New London, has a little bit higher of a rental population. And we find, you know, when we're talking about changes in the town or things like that, it's actually kind of alarming sometimes where they're like, oh, I just rent. I'm not
Yeah.
a property owner, so I can't really say anything here. And I'm like, no, 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 that's not it at all. And so again, that education piece, letting them know that like they are able to participate. And, you know, it's a piece of the puzzle again, that
Yeah.
kind of helps meld it all together. One of the ways, I know it wasn't necessarily asked, but in New London, again, for them, they just recently started their hop. They had gotten in at the tail end of the last phase. And so this summer they started their hop, and with my navigator position, they're kind of winding down. But again, on the outreach arena, when they were going for their first hop kind of outreach event, symposium, information session, if you will, they were trying to brainstorm on ways to get out there and information. And so one way that, you know, I really kind of was like, a mailer would be great, because again, you're mailing to your entire town, renters are included, businesses are included, property owners are included. And, you know, because you could have a second home property, they don't get to vote here, but they are a property owner. So you kind of cast that net very wide. And they did we did do a mailer for New London in late October, early November. Got that together now for that.
Nice.
So that was one mechanism that we
Yep.
used.
For the Adam,
Yes, yeah, yep, yep, mhm, yeah,
he used to work for you guys.
yes, he did. He did.
Any other question for us, Renee?
The news of the 30,000, I would imagine, is very kind of new and fresh, and the brainstorming over the
And it
till the
hurts.
18th will be new, but
The gut punch.
yeah, so I'm so sorry again to hear that. But I understand the popularity of it has been great. And I think that the other thing that kind of we're able to bring in, myself and, I believe Tim had attended as well, some of the Housing Academy, which I think, yeah, you'd gone there. Again, those connections, and we're still, you know, able to tap into some of those other towns that have had hops, and again, glean information or glean processes, what's worked, what hasn't. And so we're all kind of still in contact as well, to kind of move forward. So I understand that 30,000 is a little bit less than, would there be like, and if you don't have an answer for this just yet, I completely understand what, you know, in your hierarchy, looking at the application, what to you all is kind of the top tier things?
That's what we're gonna talk
Is that
about
what you're
when
gonna
you
talk about?
leave.
Okay, okay.
We'll let you
Yeah,
know. Yeah, we'll
okay.
let you know.
Yeah, yep, I understand. So.
All right, any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, good to see
And-
you too.
Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to get back to any of the people that we've interviewed with
Mhm.
positive news at this point,
Yeah, I understand.
because we have to fall back and regroup.
Mhm,
but-
I understand.
Thank
Yeah.
you, thank you again very much for
Sure.
coming in and sharing
Thank
with us
you.
your approach. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
I'll leave this to, these are some, again, in the conversation, when you're thinking through things, the town of Newport was also a HOP grant recipient that we were the
Mhm.
consultant with. Their budget, I want to say, was about 26,000. So they did kind of a very small, impactful, kind of see what they could do. All three of these items, or four items in here, come from the final report that we did for them. So I will leave that with you all too. So there's 4 copies there. But if that helps a little bit and kind of see
Yeah.
what we could do. And
Quick
sure,
question.
yeah.
And I heard that Lebanon had architectural plans that you must be aware of them, particularly since Megan used to work there.
Yeah.
And are they their own? I mean, are they something that we could look at and you
Mhm.
copy or use without hiring the architects?
That's a really good question.
I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
you've heard any conversations about
So
that.
they've, the status that I'm aware of at the last update that I had was that they had a bunch that the architect out west had created. They dwindled them down, put it through the community to say, what do you guys like? Got those back, saw which ones kind of bubbled to the top, and they're kind of taking those and trying to, I think, do about, I want to say 10 or 12 designs out of like what was 70 potential options, 60. Don't quote me too much, but it was pretty high what they originally had. And so they're trying to get it down to a nice little portfolio of options for the pattern zoning. So that's the last I knew where it was at. One thing that I know was learned out of that is if looking at architects, kind of, they had to go through another more local one because of snow building and snow load and stuff like that. So, um, definitely kind of just something to be aware of. I don't know as far as like kind of utilizing. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I can certainly inquire. I don't know at the moment. I apologize. But yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'll just point out that I just checked, the work products from their 3 hot brands are on their website, so anyone can go and look
Yes.
at the results.
Awesome.
Yeah, all
Good.
of the final toolkits are
Yeah.
up there. So yeah, please do peruse those. You know, it's been, I enjoy housing enough. And so we kind of have our areas. And it's, yeah, it's been a great past couple of years. I'm looking forward to the next projects that we do, but
tell us your website.
oh, yes. So it is uvlsrpc.org. Upper Valley Lake Snippy Regional Planning
It's a
Commission.
mouthful, isn't it?
It is. I always joke that when I was first hired, that I had to listen to a recording before I went to bed to fall asleep to be able to say UVLSRPC. But .org, and we just revamped the website as well. So it might look a little different from maybe what you remember, but
Awesome.
hopefully easier to navigate.
Yeah.
And if you go to the housing section, yes, you'll certainly find. And I know also, I'll say one more quick thing. I don't want to take up too much time. Apologize. I know you all mentioned it referenced in your application, the Keys to the Valley initiative, which we're a part of
Mhm.
with the other two regional planning commissions. And that is still going forward. We all still meet regularly, and are looking forward on a housing utility business plan. So there's, a lot of forward momentum there too, that's still happening.
Nice.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Good.
So stay tuned.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Drive safe.
Thank you. Yes, you all too. Hopefully it doesn't start.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's back up on the agenda, and there are no hearings, no conceptuals. Eric, select board report?
We had a fairly benign meeting on Monday. But not a whole lot going on. We did get a little report on the marsh wells were tested. They seem to be, they're, well, at least one of them is gonna be usable, so that's good news for the water system. And they're still working through, there's a long way to go before they get connected to a lot of that thing, but that's going forward, which is good for the town in general. Tax rate got set. That was the most interesting discussion at $16.91. So everybody can now pay their taxes for the year. I'm sure people are thrilled about that. Had an update on the fraud. There's not a lot there, but I'm happy to chat with anybody about it. Yeah, that was pretty much what we did this week.
An update on the what?
The cybersecurity fraud.
Oh.
Yeah.
I heard frog.
Oh.
You're not alone, Linda. I heard frog as well, and I thought it was an acronym for something.
Oh, no.
I was
No.
waiting for it.
No, the cybersecurity fraud is gonna be on our agenda every meeting for the next
Year.
probably, you know, so, partly just to make sure there's a place for people to talk about it, if they have questions and to
Mhm.
make sure, you know,
So,
Where are we on that now?
Still a lot of unknown. We did receive, a check back from the bank for $257,208.23, which is, well below sort of what had sort of been bandied about, 450K. But that's where we are now. But that's not necessarily everything we'll get, but it might be everything we get. There's a lot of unknowns.
So that's about a third of what we lost, give or take.
Well, why do we not know how much more,
Because,
if any?
because it's, run through the Secret Service and they,
giving a secret.
well, one, they just don't tell us. And two, it's unclear. I won't say I understand exactly how they work, but because of the network of the way these frauds work with bank accounts, it's theoretically possible that they would be able to pull money back through by tracing them through the various paths. So I can't give you a good answer because I don't understand how all that stuff works.
I think some of that money wasn't sure if it was a pool of money that was to be dispersed
Correct, and
amongst
that's,
other culprits.
and that's why there may have been multiple victims that deposited into the same account. And then
Mhm.
it was being pulled out, and so you don't know what portion of that is yours relative.
Yeah.
Basically, it's complicated. I don't understand exactly all the details. And it's gonna take a significant period of time to sort through it all.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for that report, Eric. Rob, what have you got on your plate?
I'll keep it real light. 2 weeks ago, I attended the budget meeting. We had a presentation, for the planning and zoning building inspection that I did in front of the budget committee. That was a Thursday night, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Thought that went well. We had a master planning task force meeting on Monday of last week, which I think David probably will
We
update
did.
you guys on. Thought it was successful. I've been working with Liz Kelly at the Resilience to put the finishing touches on. We think we're 99.9 with that. And actually, we've scheduled the hearing for your next meeting 2 weeks from tonight. So we have to get basically the notice out 10 days in advance. So we've scheduled that. So it's going to be an ad in the paper as well as I posted it on the website and the 2 locations the bulletin boards that we stand.
Yeah, that's our official required planning board here to
For the
adopt
adopt.
or not
Right.
the master plan.
Yep. Still no word from Superior Court on our zoning case. I think a lawyer told us it'll probably take all of the 60 days that they're supposed to take. See what else. Still getting a fair number of calls here, busy real estate speculation still happens. It does slacken a little bit in the winter months, but I've noticed, steady people calling and wanting to know what they can do with this land or that land. It's a big piece of land for sale on Goodhue Road. Still taking a lot of calls on that one. It's like 140 acres. That one's gonna be a little bit of a challenge for access because of being class 6 road up in there. But I think there's a buyer lining up right now. We'll see. I've actually talked to him, so we'll see. That probably is gonna sell, but it's been a lot of calls. Probably, I bet I said close to 15 calls on that one piece of land from different people, realtors, speculators. Again, it's not a lot of big chunks of land for sale still, so that one has had some interest. But I think people that are interested do get scared when they see that it's a class 6 road and the
Yeah,
access is
too.
a challenge. What's that?
Yeah, and the condition of the road too.
Yeah. I think it was logged pretty heavy in the 90s. And it's kind of just been somebody's private hunting area. I did talk to the owner. He actually called me too. So, other than that, take any questions you guys have. Obviously, we've been working on getting ready for this, today. We've scheduled the interviews. We had 2 interviews this afternoon with the other 2 contractors that responded to our RFQ. We do have those recorded. I'm gonna figure out a way to get you, if you guys wanna watch those recordings, kind of get a sense for each of those 2 other firms. You already got to hear about the RPC tonight. We interviewed Ivy Van with Carol Ogilvy, sort of a 2-person tag team. And then we interviewed Judy Barrett's her company. That was kind of neat because a guy named Alex Mullens, who used to work for the RPC, is kind of a subcontractor with Judy Barrett's company, a company called SE Group. Based in, did they say Colorado? Is that what they said they were?
Yeah, well, they have an office in Burlington.
They have an office in Burlington.
They're fairly large.
Yeah, 65 people. Alex still lives in the Upper Valley. He lives in the White River. He was great. We worked with him. He had come to the RPC in Lebanon from North Country Council, which is another RPC up in the North Country. And he was fantastic, but as you,
Well, maybe we should hold that conversation for when we get to that topic about what to do next.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which, will happen right after we look at the minutes. Unless Rob has anything else. Okay. Minutes are on the table. Anyone have any comments, questions, changes?
I had no changes.
I'm just good with it.
Whitney, you did it again.
I see a hand.
A hand from Sealy.
She's got to unmute herself. Steely, you're
Go ahead.
muted.
Sealy, we can't hear you. Or see you. Is she muted again?
She's been muted consistently.
Can you unmute her?
I can't speak. Oh, I can mute her, but
There she goes. She's unmuted. Sealy?
Yes.
there you go.
Okay. Now we can hear you.
Where are you? Let's see you.
I'd rather hear her.
Yeah.
Let's get-
Sealy, we're talking about the minutes right now. Did you have any comments on them?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you speak up?
Can you? How's it now? Wait a minute.
That's good.
Good now?
Good.
Okay. All right. I'm on 188 and I read the minutes, but it's not everything I said. And I think it kind of cuts me off. And I think it's important what I said. And that was about the,
Sealy, you're fading out. Can you speak louder, or Rob, can you turn her up?
I've got a microphone on, headset on. Can you hear me? No?
No.
Just barely.
I don't know why.
Nope.
Try and get this.
I think we got you.
Rob,
Try again.
what? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Rob, I sent you an email. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Rob says he did not get your email.
Oh, I sent it earlier this evening. Anyway, this is what I said. On 188, the
Yeah.
line. Okay, I had said when it was said that there were going to be so many dwellings, I said adding, and I thought it was 6. So it's 5 or 6 dwelling units would be like adding 6 families to one R5 lot. So, which would change the.
Celia, we're losing you again. You're fading out.
Can look at the recording, right? Celia, it sounds like there were some comments that you made that weren't included that you want to be included in the minutes.
Yes, yes.
I can look at the recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could hold off.
Yeah, why don't you do that? And, at our next meeting, we can come back to these minutes.
Okey-doke.
Okay, thank you, Sealy. We will address your comments in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now comes the elephant in the room. And I think it would be beneficial if I read the letter that the HOP grant people sent. It says, "Dear Enfield, thank you for your submission to the Invest NH Housing Opportunity Planning Grant Program. This application round was highly competitive and we received requests well over our funding allocation. After careful review, the steering committee has chosen not to fund your proposal as currently submitted. However, we are inviting you to provide a full resubmission based on the following recommendations. Number one, reduce your scope of work to more reasonably achievable actions that can be accomplished in the timeline. In parentheses, recommendation of focusing on an audit of your zoning ordinances that impact workforce housing. Number two, rewrite language to include specific, clearly defined goals and objectives. And number three, expand explanation demonstrating readiness. This invitation is extended with a reduced budget allocation. We ask your scope of work and budget target $30,000. Deadline for resubmission is December 18, 2024 by end of day. The NH Housing team can be available should you wish to discuss your project and get support in drafting your resubmission. We ask that you respond to this email as soon as possible with confirmation that you plan to resubmit an application. If you would like to set a meeting to discuss, please also include some preferred dates and times. Thank you for your time and effort put into the HOP application process. We look forward to hearing back from you. Sincerely, Grace Warwick, Associate Program Manager, Community Grants, New Hampshire Housing, blah, blah, blah. So that's where we are. That's where they think we are, which I'm not certain are exactly the same. We're not exactly on the same page.
They're looking for affordable housing only.
And they're looking for a zoning audit, which, I mean, I kind of think we know what's wrong with our zoning ordinances. And we're way past the stage of needing to define what's wrong. We're at the stage of needing to define what we need to do to correct. So, having said that, comments, questions, do you want to take 2 weeks and digest this and discuss it at our next meeting?
No, we don't have time.
Too late.
We don't have 2 weeks.
Oh, you're right.
The 18th
They
is.
wanted
2
to
weeks
answer.
from
You're
today.
right. You are right.
Well, I think we should send them an email, say, yeah, we're gonna resubmit.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's obvious that they want to see workforce housing. Show us how you're going to put workforce housing. There's not affordable housing, it's workforce. Sorry, there's a major difference in their mind. That affordable housing is subsidized housing as opposed to workforce. But that's what they're looking for, and that's what they want the HOP grant to be based on. You putting into your zoning the ability for workforce housing.
I will take issue, Dan. I believe affordable housing is not subsidized. I think it's housing that is affordable in relation to the median income of the area.
Well, no.
No.
Affordable housing is a technical
That's the
federal
legal
term
definition.
based on you will be subsidized if your income is below this amount.
It's a HUD's.
It's a
Okay.
HUD used the term affordable housing. You can look them up because I did that, because I'm going affordable or workforce. And there is a definite difference. The workforce housing is, this is the amount you can charge for rent. You have to be able to build a house at X
Okay, I
amount
got
of
it back.
dollars.
Yeah, you're right. I got it
Affordable
backwards in
housing
my head.
says if you're below this amount, you can get section 8.
Yeah, okay,
Affordable subsidized housing. But they're looking at workforce.
okay,
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
HUD defines affordable housing as housing where the occupant pays no more than 30% of their gross income for housing costs, including utilities.
Okay, I got it backwards. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's okay.
that's okay.
So yeah, they want workforce housing, which is, you know, our zoning can address part of that problem. The other part of the problem is that building workforce housing is real tough to do,
Yeah.
given the price of materials, given the price of labor.
I
It
agree.
needs some sort
Oh,
of
yeah.
subsidy.
Well,
Well, the subsidy becomes the density.
I'm not even sure they care about that. They just want the ability to.
zoning has to allow it.
Yeah.
Right,
Right, yeah.
That's the piece that we can do. That's what they
That's
want
right.
to see. They
That's
want to
right.
be not preventing it.
Dictate price
Yeah.
to a developer.
No,
Right.
they want it to be allowed.
right,
And that's
exactly.
You know, so my suggestion is that a couple of folks are empowered to have that call with them. Talk through our current zoning, because during that conversation, it'll be pretty easy to convince them that we understand where we are, we don't need an audit.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the overall scope, but we're sort of on a path of having a draft done. That the new scope would largely be the rewriting of our drafts to be legal and making sure that workforce housing is allowed in
Right.
appropriate zones. That would be the focus of, that's my initial thought for the consultant would be.
Mhm.
And the second part of that is Resilience did the audit already as a part of the first upgrade.
Yeah,
That's right.
So,
we asked, or I made a
Right.
point with the interviews, I think both of them, to say that while they both had included audits as part of their suggested scope.
Right.
I said, you know, we already know what's wrong with the ordinance and we want a completely new ordinance. And they said, well, yes, we understand that, but that process helps us understand you guys better.
Yeah.
And so if we're dealing with, if that's the only reason to do the audit, it's not that convince us, it's to show, you know,
Show that.
we can I think you're right. We can just say, hey, we don't need an audit.
Yeah. Although I think what you just said is that the contractor needs to get up to speed and doing
How
an
they,
audit.
how
is
they
part of it.
accomplish that's up to them. It doesn't have to be part of. our
Right, right. I mean, the audit can be just simply them reading our ordinance and saying, this change, this goes, this goes, this goes. This is, you know, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
well,
And-
Resilience
and-
did that.
They did that.
They said you don't have workforce housing in there.
We give them resilience as a reporter.
Right.
I mean, the big thing we lose if we take, my initial thought is we lose all the public engagement help and support. That's the piece that largely gets cut out in what I just suggested, which is
Right.
a big challenge.
Yeah.
You gotta do it.
Well, you have to do it,
can't
but the
not.
consultant won't do it, the proposal won't do it. That's what I'm getting, like, that's
Right.
But it'll be on
Huge.
us.
Right.
This will be on us.
Well,
Us, the town doing the outreach.
yeah, and here's,
And the consultant's not gonna, you're not gonna pay the consultant
Well, they-
to sit there for 4 hours.
No. Oh, we're gonna be there.
No,
It's
no,
not
but
gonna be.
it's not gonna be in his budget to, on $30,000.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not gonna, I guess what it comes down to is we're not gonna get a complete zone ordinance
Right.
rewrite
No.
Right.
on $30,000.
Well, for
No,
sure.
Well, this grant is not designed for,
I know, and
Well, that
that's
anyways.
what we've tried to do is get around that.
right, yeah, well,
Of
it's-
this is what it really is for and not, they're not looking for zoning rewrites.
no,
They're looking for putting zoning ordinances in there that allow workforce housing,
Period.
period, or housing.
And you know what? With that in mind, we can limit the zones that they have to look at, right? They don't need to look at necessarily the conservation zone.
Right,
Potentially, you know, there might be some others.
right.
Where,
We
Well,
say
I
to
mean,
the consultant, these are
we
the zones we
focused
want you
on
to look at.
what we're gonna propose is the the old CB districts and the Enfield core,
Right.
focus there.
Right.
Cause that's where the water sewer lines are,
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
the one trick though is because of the language around your
The law.
largest zone.
Largest zone,
We may have to at least,
show that there's an
we
ability.
need to include
build
that
it
in the
in
analysis.
the
We don't
R5.
restrict what can be built there.
Yes, we do. We restrict it to single family
So,
On 5
but we don't
acres.
define,
on 5
we
acres.
don't, oh, well, okay, the 5 acres, you can argue that. But we don't say you can't put a modular or a trailer there.
No, we don't.
Towns do, and that's the difference.
Right,
We don't. We don't say you cannot pull a trailer in there and it meets hard to, housing standards
Right.
and live in it.
But I think what they would be happier with are zoning ordinances that are more proactive. Like what we've been talking about for our R5 district as the proposed, amendment.
And none of this, at the end of the day, we don't actually have to pass the amendment.
Right.
So,
But we have to have it in there. But
so how about this? We stick with the plan to rewrite the zoning ordinance for March of 26. Except that we limit the sections that we're actually going to attempt to completely rewrite. And I'm thinking R1, 3, and 5. We pretty much just take the existing land use codes from those sections, move it to the new ordinance. Don't change a whole lot with it.
Right.
There will be some wording changes, obviously we'll need to make, but minor stuff. Don't have that be a controversy at all. The HOP grant could help maybe say, well, you should put in some multifamily home ideas and that sort of thing. Well, yeah, we could do that, but we're not. We don't have to take the recommendations at the end of the day. So anyway, the Lake Shore districts, we probably should just postpone, hold off on that. The homeowners association stuff, I don't know. I mean, that could be simple, that could be complicated, we can decide. But as what you're saying, I think we focus most of the changes, if not all of them, at the village district. And so we spend most of our time doing outreach and that sort of thing at that
level.
For that district. And while, yes, we'll continue to pursue the other districts and we can have some sorts of forums for those, the goal is not to have words on paper for March of 26. It's just to continue that discussion. Now, for the $30,000, how we can weave in some assistance and all that, I'm not sure. It's a lot more restrictive than I initially thought. But I'm looking at the Upper Valley Planning Commission here thinking that, circuit rider, navigator, there may be some assistance there that we can leverage to help us out with these things. So that's where my head is anyway.
Well, there's certainly, their billing rate, we believe, is a lot less expensive per hour because we're a member.
Right.
And they are a regional planning and not a for-profit planning firm. So in terms of bang for our $30,000 buck, I think we're gonna get more out of them. The question would be the quality, and who knows?
Yeah, and
Sometimes the underdog fights a little harder.
We knew we were gonna have to do a lot of work ourselves.
yeah.
I mean, when you were talking to consultants, the other two consultants, was the price cuts?
No.
Not even
We
Brian.
found out like an hour before the meetings, actually 10 minutes
Yeah.
before the first one.
And we didn't feel like we could say anything without the full
Right.
board
Oh, okay.
So we just
Well,
talked to them.
Well, I'm sure that the consult, well, they probably got wind that
Yep,
there was less money for everybody going around,
probably.
Yeah.
but they didn't know how much.
Right.
For a town.
Well, I will venture to say that they probably knew how much, because conversation that I had with, Steve Whitman of Resilience, he knew how much.
For
Because
us individually, for Enfield or,
for other towns that he had been speaking with,
yeah,
for some reason, I think there were 2 or 3 that he received, notice from them or information from them before Thanksgiving.
yeah.
And he was told, 30 grand. So I would not be at all surprised
Okay,
if
so that's sort of like
if-
the base.
30 is the ceiling for anybody who's gonna
Okay.
get money.
So all three of these firms know the HOP grant program. They've all worked with it for a number of times. They know us pretty well now. Between the questions we asked and the conversations we had back and forth, plus their own research. I'm wondering if we don't turn to all three of them and say, look,
What can you do for 30?
exactly, that fits the criteria. for HOP.
Sound familiar?
You know where we eventually want to go, so help us write this thing, or give us some suggestions to include in the new submittal. And that, you know, if we get to 30, then we're gonna bring on one of you to help us out.
Right.
Mhm.
Eric mentioned it earlier, but just a reminder that the work products for the HOP grants that the Regional Planning Commission have done are online, and they're pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
So I would say check those too.
And I mean, initially I was not
They got better value.
thrilled about, like personally, the regional planning vacation for all the reasons we talked about earlier. But when you get a little over a third
Right.
left, you know, almost 2/3 of your budget got cut before you even started. And like you said, they're not a for-profit organization. I think the money will go further.
Well,
And there would be, because we are members, we can always,
We can,
outside of the grants, do follow-up. Stop, hey.
when we focus on the next 2 meetings,
right.
I think we need to empower David and probably 2 other people to have a conversation with, I forget who wrote that letter, and rewrite the grant and submit it.
Right.
Mhm.
Not to rush, but keep in mind that if everybody's getting $30,000, everybody's gonna be looking for the budget person to do it. So they may only have so many openings that,
Right.
you know, if somebody else goes and takes them, like say if you're already thinking about them, you might want to move up
That's a good
that thought
point.
process because people are gonna be jumping at the lower option.
They're gonna be there.
And they're gonna say yes to who comes to them
Right.
instead of waiting.
I just feel like I'm settling. Maybe I am, maybe there's no choice.
I don't think there's a choice. Because after hearing a couple of comments here, I'm thinking that
They're also a little bit more local. That might bring something
Well,
to it.
that's one of my downsides for one of those.
Some of the people that, you know, I know that resilience, a lot of things I heard from people that did go to some of those things. People felt like they were talked down to, they weren't that talkable to ask the questions to. They didn't really feel like they knew our area and how it impacted them. I think somebody that's a little bit more local might realize that it's more from this area. The demographics are very similar. They're gonna bring something to the table.
I mean, one of the other applicants, I don't know which one it was, I know a while since I read it, was based in Western Mass, Southern New Hampshire. That was their base,
Okay.
and that's where their focus is.
I think
And
if
it's
you,
very
I,
different
I think
than
that if you
North
had been,
Concord.
I think if you had been here during the interviews,
Mhm.
you would be changing your tune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were impressive.
they were.
Both, they were both impressive.
Yeah,
You're talking about Bear Group? from-
And Ivy and Carol.
Both of them.
both.
Oh, yeah.
We're impressive.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Very much
they're
more
very
so.
Professional,
I'll
but
just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Very much more so.
Well, maybe we're at the point where we just throw in the towel and we say, look, we've interviewed 3 firms. Although you all didn't have the benefit of that, or we could listen to them tonight if we wanted to, just watching them.
No, thank you.
And then, given the lack of money, fact that all the good reasons you mentioned about Upper Valley, maybe we should just go with them. Say, help us put this new grant application in.
Yeah.
And see what you can do to leverage what we already could get from you guys with this 30 to get where we want to go.
When you say leverage what we can already get. Question for Rob. If we engage them outside of the HOP grant, do we pay them on an hourly rate, or do we have a certain amount of work per year that they will do for us? How does it work?
Yeah, they do, we pay a membership fee. And we do get service for that fee. We have representation on their commission. Right now, our exclusive rep is Ed Morris, town manager. I think they're actually meeting tonight.
They are, because that's why planning board members
Exactly.
can't be commissioners.
Exactly. But we do get a certain amount of service, but I would say, you know, for a special project above and beyond just standard stuff. I mean, they put the tubes out in the summer to measure our
To the
traffic
towns.
and. But, you know, if it's a special project, like they offered us to do culvert inventory for DPW, that's above and beyond regular sort of standard service, and we would have to pay per hour fee for that.
So would it be fair to say then that whatever work they do for us in support of our HOP grant would have to be paid for by the HOP grant because
Or by the town. Yeah,
because the town doesn't have any funds available for it
correct.
unless we, put a warrant article on. And, I think given the financial situation of the town, I'm not sure that would be something that would go over very well.
This town meeting coming, not to 25.
Right,
Maybe 26 has an
Right.
extension saying this is where we're at, this is where we got, and maybe to finish, put a warrant article in 2026 for planning, continue the planning, rewrites. It might fly.
maybe.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's always a maybe, it's our meeting, but.
Well, we're just trying to strategize out different ways that we can go with it.
And it's too late to approach the budget committee for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think regardless if we can't get much in terms of leverage work out of them that will support this program, it would seem that they could come up with the best way to use that 30,000 to get us further along than any of the others.
Yeah, then the others will. What you're gonna get with the other two is better planners, more expensive planners, because they've worked for RPCs.
Yeah.
Half of those guys I know from RPCs around the state.
That,
A lot of people that get into the RPCs
Yeah, I
get
mean,
into it in
like,
order
people
to
we were
get
talking
someplace
to
else.
had, I think the shortest one had 20 years of experience.
That's what I mean, yeah.
And many of them 30 and 35, so,
Mhm.
I mean, they've seen it all, right?
I,
I'm not so sure you're gonna get that on,
there were 3 executive directors
where
of
we
the
are.
RPC when I was a commissioner.
Yeah.
Just when I was a commissioner there were 3 different executive directors.
Rob, who's paying for that Main Street?
That was federal money kicked out from, they get grant money consistently.
So, well, that's a piece that is dovetails right in with what we're trying to do here. Is there still work product or something that comes out of that? or
Yeah, they'll be giving us a report. Yep.
additional, forums or anything?
I don't think so, no. They gathered a lot of data, you know, they put the tubes across Main Street in several locations and observed and, then we had that event last month.
Okay, now how about
Nice.
mapping product?
I thought they did a great job, and with their electronic communication too, they had a survey. That was.
They do a GIS
Oh, you mean
up
the
there.
The Main
Yeah.
Street,
community?
the Regional Planning Commission, yeah, the Main Street. Sure.
But there's something I didn't like about that meeting, and that was the choice of the night. It's like no one checked what other meetings were being held that night. Lots of people talked to me and said, oh, I want to go, but there's a budget meeting or there's something else. And,
How many people did you have at the budget meeting? 2?
Well, wasn't that the night of the septic meeting, septic regs?
No, it was a budget.
anyway, usually that thing is on a Saturday morning, a Sunday afternoon.
We've tried Saturdays, we've tried Sundays, we've tried many different times. I
Yeah.
mean, you're gonna get the 35 people, that's what we got.
Right,
That's
in
what
all
we got.
due respect, Linda,
Yeah,
it shouldn't have been up to them to know that there was other meetings. It should have been up to us to know that there were other meetings, because we're the ones that have the facility that's being booked. And if somebody over there had said, do you know there's 2 other meetings that night? They probably would have changed.
Well, I mean, you can't win. I mean, there's so
You
much
can't.
going on. You can't.
I know,
especially this time of year.
You're never gonna pick a
now
time.
before for you this week or 3?
You make the
Yeah.
best of it.
I have another question. It's not from 30,000 feet, it's just from 30 feet. Does workforce housing doesn't have to be on, water and sewer, is that right?
Doesn't have to be.
And since it's hard on builders because it's so expensive these days, land is expensive, the materials, et cetera. Does the town have any land that to make it possible for a builder, they could be, well, given in some form in order to not have the cost of land? And the one I'm thinking of is a lot that's been 2 lots at the corner of Route 4A and Grafton Pond Road. It's not called Grafton Pond Road. What's it called? When you're going to graft out 4A and you're going to Grafton Pond.
No, those
It's
are-
Grafton.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, those
Connection to
are-
Hope Hill.
those are conserved, so those are,
they're conserved now?
they've been for a long time.
Oh, I missed
Well,
that.
No,
Well, wait a minute, two,
no, the
But
2
they
lots
sold-
were
they sold
sold.
those
They sold
lots.
them.
they
Those were
sold them.
sold.
Did?
Those were sold 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I believe more than 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, those were
No,
sold.
no, the
Mark
only,
Wilson.
probably the only lot that could come close is the Shed Street right now.
And they've sold it.
And there's no.
Well,
Okay,
contingents, it's
Right.
still,
Well, and if you think about that, I've had a number, well, it was a listserv, kind of lit up there for a few
Right.
days about that. Just of it was, the town sold a 3-acre lot for $80,000 and should have got 200 for it. Well,
Right.
one of the reasons you sold it for $80,000 is the very purpose you were talking about. Make the land not that much of a factor and
Right.
now, what do we get back in terms of what the builder's gonna do?
That's right.
are there any strings attached to it, like work?
Eric, can you more about that?
There are not strings on what they can charge for rent, no.
No,
Now, there could have been, but maybe they wouldn't have had a buyer then.
right,
It's
Right,
exactly.
We only had one person.
they were the only one who came in with the project.
And I will say the number he said, which he's not obligated to stay to.
Right.
Was less than than the competition for comparable units.
Right.
Mhm.
Probably less than what Keller says he's gonna get.
The
Yeah.
town did
So
that
it
once
is.
before.
Yeah, I know, that's what I mean.
And I don't want to say because he's not obligated, that there are no
Right,
requirements from the town on that front. But what he said in a public meeting was below where other developers are pricing apartments.
but Linda, you're right.
Yeah.
If the town has land, they should sell it. Because what happened on Grafton Pond Road was they sat on it for 10 years, waiting for the real estate market to come back. when they would have gotten 10 years of taxes. That would have made no difference as to what they sold it for.
The next,
That's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to get it back on the tax roll, and
the next practical opportunity, which comes up very shortly, is, fire station,
right. Is the fire station,
that lot.
and possibly the.
Well, both of those, but the fire,
although
that's the
fire
bigger
station
lot
is
that
a better-
has,
Is a better lot.
that has more opportunity.
Is that on water sewer?
And we own
Yes,
the land, yes, yes,
And we own the
The
land,
land's not owned by the state.
right?
no,
And that's why I say that's the next one, because that's gonna be the clean,
that's a clean
easy,
sale.
like, you know, and there's, so that would be an example of a lot where the town owns the property, has control of it, and
And another example, it's a lot on May Street that was given to Habitat for Humanity.
That's right.
Who then built a single family home.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
So it has been done.
Yeah,
It's but if you
That
think
was
about,
Hulva, Pekka Hulva.
yeah, it's just it's a spit in the ocean in terms of helping solve the problem.
right.
And I will say the town is, I know Rob has made sure that like Twin Pines is well aware
Yeah.
of, like, they were well aware of Shed Street.
Yep.
And so there is communication with agencies that do
Yep.
various types of projects.
Go back to the question at hand is, do we just throw in the towel with Upper Valley? And ask if they'll be a partner with this grant and help us out what they can otherwise with the zoning.
Well, the bottom line is that we don't have to present any of their recommendations to the town for a vote.
Right.
So that if they do something that we as a planning board think is really good, we can put it
Yeah.
before the town. If they come up with some wacky idea that we think won't fly politically, we can kill it right here.
Well, hopefully, be able to catch that before it even gets near the end.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, they're coming, hopefully it'll be an ongoing conversation with them as it's being written, and if something's like, this is just too far out there. We just say, go back and rewrite it.
Go around the table. Upper Valley, yay or nay? Linda?
I would like to watch the interview of the other two first.
Eric?
I sort of feel like Linda, I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves in terms of picking someone. What we really need to do is figure out how to write the grant, submit the grant. But if people want Upper Valley, I'm comfortable with them. I think they'll do a good quality.
Well, why don't we rephrase the
Yeah.
question and say, let's give, David and whoever else to rewrite the grant and get it in.
Yeah, no, that's what I think we need to do is,
And make sure that
Let's do that
the
first.
three of them will accept the $30,000.
Well, we could.
Well, we don't have to do that.
We don't have to do that.
Anyways,
Go back to them later,
right,
if we want or if not.
I mean,
agree.
what I don't wanna do is have a repeat of what we did with resilience, which was they helped in
Well,
terms of pulling together the budget and the scope of work.
yeah, I agree.
And then, we shut them out.
Yeah, I agree. But I think if we give you the authority to move ahead with submitting the second version of the grant, we can decide later everything else, right? And, I don't think it's important that we go into it, now. But in terms of what we did to resilience, the email that they sent us is gonna solve that problem because it's very, very focused and it's very, very small. And
Yeah.
The total budget's 30,000, you don't have to break it out.
Let me say one other thing, which I think is gonna influence, our thinking as a board. They asked for a complete resubmission, and one of the items that needs to be submitted is a letter of commitment from your preferred contractor. So I think we have to decide
Oh,
who we want. Dan?
David, could I suggest something I haven't heard yet? Would you want all three of the companies to resubmit their RFP based on $30,000. Would that help you make a decision? You could do that in a parallel path while you respond to the letter. And by the time, hopefully they can do their RFP pretty quickly. And by the time you get to the 18th, you could have another decision-making meeting.
Well,
where you select one.
But basically, they were given a scope of work and a budget, which we developed.
Yeah.
For our submission of the grant. Asking them to each do it, yeah, maybe.
Downside?
What's that?
Is there a downside to asking them to do it?
I'm not sure that there's a downside.
The only thing I would say is, it was a request for qualifications. It wasn't a request for pricing or anything like that. We just got basically statements of their.
But as an approach, Dan's on to something where if we have a lesser scope, it's very easy to send it to them and say, is this scope, would you be interested in this
Right.
scope of work for this amount of money? And they'll be able to respond quite quickly.
Yes.
And I will also, I'd like to just disagree a little bit with, it's very, very common within government contractor. I say this as a government contractor, for contractors to help, so to do this kind of work, and with the understanding that the work is then going to be put out to bid. We do this work all the time, and we never expect to be a sole source contractor. That's not how government contracting generally works. You work with your clients, you help them develop stuff. Incumbents have an advantage. Everyone knows that. And when you're bidding, when somebody else was the incumbent, you understand that you're at a disadvantage. But it's very common for people to help develop scopes of work for proposals and then to have to bid against that. That's very much how it works.
Okay. So there's another option or another direction.
Well, certainly an informal discussion with three, say, here's the letter we received.
Yeah.
You know where we want to go.
Mhm.
Do you want to work with us to develop a scope that would A, satisfy HOPS, B, help us get to where we want, the eventual rewrite?
Mhm.
What would be the best way what would you advise we use the money for? Something like that. And out of the three, maybe one just says, you know what, it's just not something we're interested in doing. Perhaps even two. All three could say, yeah, we'll help with that. Say this, I don't see any downside to that at all. We don't have a meeting between now and the 18th.
The problem.
That's right. I suppose we could have a special meeting,
Well, part of
just
the
throwing it out.
problem I'm saying is, the only way we can afford, even in 2 years, the other applicants is if we get another grant. We're not gonna get $50,000 out of the town in 2 years. And even in 2 years' time, I don't see the town saying, go ahead and doing that. We gotta have some kind of grant money to do that. And the regional planning commission is gonna be the cheapest. You're gonna get more information for less money. And possibly enough money from the town to continue it down in 2 years' time. You might get $20,000 out of the town. But 15 or whatever, something like that, something a little bit more realistic. At town meeting.
Well, or get it through the budget process.
Right, yeah. Even
Better off
do
through
that.
the budget process.
I mean, well, the select board can always just put the grant in, put a warrant article in.
Well, no,
Right.
what I'm saying
Yeah.
is you're better, you have a better chance of getting it through the budget process.
Right, yeah,
Than you do through a warrant article.
right, yeah.
And maybe Ed can, working with the board, you do have some opportunities with unspent surplus at the end of the fiscal year.
I wouldn't count on that.
That's this year. Well, certainly not this year, but that still goes through the budget process. It's not like a discretionary fund, still either goes through the budget process or through a warrant article.
Yeah.
It's not like it's discretionary money.
Yeah, I'm just thinking long term, if we want to continue with the consultant that we picked this time, that it's gonna either be a grant money to continue, or it's gonna be town budget, town meeting money.
Right.
And I don't see a lot of grants, you know, I'm not hearing about other grants being available. I mean, it might be, but they're gonna be refocused again. They're not gonna be zoning rewrites. They're gonna be focused on housing.
Well, I was with you there up until thinking further about this. Other comments have led me to now conclude that I think talking to the three of them could do no harm.
Right.
And we're liable to get some good feedback that will help write the new grant. And you know, based on maybe the kind of feedback they give us, the help they give us, could help us decide which of the three to go with, spend the 30. So maybe we don't need to decide that. I think we can do that once we see we get the grant.
Well, we do need to have a letter of commitment that we
Oh,
can,
you got
that we
the
can
letter.
submit as part of the grant application.
Okay, so maybe we're forced into making a decision.
Well, as part of that conversation, you can ask. You could ask for a letter of commitment from all three of them. And if they provide one, then you can submit it.
There you go.
Yeah,
But we have to make the decision prior to
No.
that.
no, we could submit three.
No, this is another thing that's pretty
Oh,
common.
that's right. You can,
This-
you
You
can
can
submit
submit as
all
many
three.
letters of commitment as you want.
I thought they asked what's our preferred though.
No,
Oh, they don't.
they add, well,
Even if they do.
Let me
you can
go
still
back.
commit
Yeah, you
Multiple
could,
letters of commitment and
Yeah.
say, we're in the process of working with these three.
right.
That's a perfectly,
Yeah, because we
reasonable
haven't got the
response.
grant yet.
right.
You haven't given us the grant.
The other people knew what by Thanksgiving. It was 30,000. We just found out now.
Preferred
I think that's a red flag. So
It still doesn't matter.
It still doesn't matter,
Doesn't matter.
because you're putting out, what
Let
they're
them come
looking,
back to us and say, no, you can't submit three.
what they're looking for is to prove that you are having conversations with contractors to get the work done.
You've got commitment.
And that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And you'll accomplish that by asking, and again, there's no harm in
Right.
asking, and you say straight up, we're talking to all three of you.
Right.
Would you be interested in putting a letter of commitment in as a potential contractor?
Right.
I think if we stick to the plan we've been on, where we're gonna write the initial language.
Yep.
A grant, I'm perfectly comfortable with David and Rob and
Yeah.
whoever else wants to volunteer.
Yeah.
To put together a focused grant,
Yeah.
to look at the residential zones, might be the
Yeah.
easiest way to write it.
Yeah.
For workforce housing, and if they're starting with the language we provide them, that should be accomplishable for 30K.
okay, what they are asking for is a letter of commitment from the consultant if a consultant has been identified.
So
So that means that we can kick that one down the road,
it would
or
probably
we
make
can
our,
submit three.
it would probably make our case stronger if we had all three.
I would agree.
But as long as we have a letter of commitment, even if we've got a letter of commitment from one, it doesn't mean the other two won't do it. It just means they haven't got a letter of commitment.
Yeah.
So we have a consensus that.
Yeah.
Dave and Rob will move forward and
Yeah.
get this, put it together and send it to.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Are you too busy at legislature?
I mean, we had our organizational thing today, and the next thing that we have is in January. So
You're good.
there's a window,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And there's not much time in that window. so-
And Rob's not doing much, so.
No, well, that's fine. And how about you, Brad?
I was gonna point to Tim.
I'll help.
So the first thing, let me just kind of review as I understand it. So the first thing we are going to do is reach out to our prospective contractors who we have interviewed and say, hey, we were cut down to 30,000. This is what they are asking for. We don't think that we need an audit of our zoning regs because we think we know what's wrong with them. What can
And we had a contractor already give us an audit.
Yeah.
I think your initial call is to the author of that letter.
Okay, yeah, okay,
And then you call, and then you have all the information, and then you call the
Right.
contractors and do what you're saying.
okay. We call the contractors, we see if any of them are interested in helping us rewrite the grant. And then we go from there with whoever responds, yes, we'll help you.
Right.
And this all has to be done by the 18th.
So do we want another meeting between now and the 18th?
I think we need that.
I think David and Rob have done a nice job putting these grants together in the past, and they'll do a good job this time.
They can put.
Although they didn't get what we wanted. I'm sorry.
We, Cause we. don't
Neither
have to
did
get
anybody
nobody
else.
I think
We don't know that.
We're not gonna get the grant.
No, we're pretty sure of it.
Meanwhile, well, you guys should watch the videos of the 2
Yeah.
half-hour
Yeah.
interviews.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll get those out.
And can those get posted in a way that the public can see
See 'em?
them as well?
Do we want that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's a really great idea, Tim.
Well, the public was here for
Yeah.
this interview.
Right,
I think that it's I mean, I don't have a super strong opinion, but I do think it's fair.
Yeah.
If one was in public for all
Right.
three to be in public.
yeah,
They should certainly know
I'll
that.
put them on the YouTube. Put it on the YouTube channel. I saw the
Yeah,
select
no one will
board
find
meeting, got posted
Unless you get one.
yesterday.
It's there.
Okay.
Okay,
So on my
Next.
first time.
can you get that up tomorrow, Rob?
The YouTube videos?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
It
And then-
wouldn't be moving a cot into your office. so that
Let's do it.
If you know, you can cut out the drive
That's
time.
your last meeting.
We actually have some cots upstairs, believe it or not.
Yeah, I know.
So we submit the new grant.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll turn that decision around pretty quickly.
Who knows?
Who knows? And I guess at that point, then we choose which of the three or whoever's still standing that we can work with.
Yeah,
Dave Buffet has a question online.
oh, okay. David Buffet, unmute yourself and ask your question.
This is Dave Buffet. I support if you're gonna review outside the meeting the other consultants that you do post those to public as you've discussed. Because I think otherwise you're running some issues into right to know. Thanks, bye.
Thank you, David. Okay, I think we have a
Plan.
general plan to move the ball forward at least a little bit.
Yeah.
One other thing. In general, all grants are heading to the select board just for rules. So can you all try to remember to get it on the agenda as well for the 6th month?
Okay,
It's a formality,
yeah,
but
yeah. Well, actually, I think we
Yeah.
need a letter of
right, I
approval.
think you do, right? That's why, that's why I
Yeah.
didn't know, I think you do.
You see what else we need.
We'll make sure that happens.
We had a letter for the first one.
We
Yeah,
did.
we definitely had one and we'll write another one.
And we also need a letter of support from the planning board or something in our minutes, which I think would be easy. We need to do that tonight. Because we won't be meeting before then.
Do we need an official vote?
We need somebody to propose a resolution.
I make a motion that we put in the grant, the HOP grant for $30,000.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Let the minutes reflect that the planning board voted unanimously to proceed with a revised HOP grant 2.0. Next, if anybody still has any mental energy left, working group reports on our new zoning.
Lakeshore, Bill, reviewed and emailed it to me, which I never got, so, we're going to try to track that down and I'll review it, as soon as I get it. So probably
Okay.
tonight.
Tim? Village,
Yeah, the Shaker Village Homeowners Association sent me their bylaws, I guess. Haven't looked at them closely, but
Okay.
they're engaged in thinking about the process, so that's good. Otherwise, haven't done anything since last meeting of note. I do have some comment about the zoning structure that Eric and I worked on, but you want me to hit that now, or?
let's finish with the reports and then we can start on the proposed structure.
Just a quick question on the Shaker, is it just one association there?
And there's two,
Okay.
and I haven't made contact with the second one.
Okay.
It's smaller, but yeah, there's two.
I've talked to a couple more people, but I haven't got anything other than that in the last 2 weeks.
Okay, Eric.
I'm not on one at the moment.
Linda, anything to report?
Not this week.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to report? Okay. We have made,
I think Tim.
a little progress.
I think Tim wanted to comment on the structure that he.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that.
Yeah, okay.
So let's start a discussion on the structure that Tim has proposed. A proposed template
Well,
was
Eric,
mailed to everybody.
Yeah, Eric and I. So you got there's a template there for the land use districts.
Yeah.
And a brief instruction on sort of our thinking of how you might fill that out. And I added a list of potential land uses that, you know, just sort of a brain dump of long list, everything I could think of.
Yeah.
That we might want to say yay or nay in this zone and yes in that zone and so forth. But I thought that might be helpful, just so we don't forget something, overlook something. And the fact the interviews today, there were two more things that are not on the list: transitional housing and recovery housing, I think you mentioned.
Mhm.
So there's another couple things, you know, do we allow these things in certain zones? Anyway, there's that. And then most recently, we finished up Article 1, which is pretty much just the preamble and the purpose and kind of the lays out the who's going to be the administrator of the ordinance and that kind of thing. It's a bunch of boilerplate language, and it seemed like not a lot of controversy there, although the wording, you know, would need some wordsmithing. So yeah, so those are three parts that are there. The second one I think we probably can work on is the enforcement section, which typically is in the tail end of the ordinance. It talks about how you are the enforcing agency and stuff like that. Again, really nothing new. It's not dealing with land use particulars, just more administrative stuff. So we'll get that out to you. And then there's a piece in the middle of, there's land use sections, very specific land use. And then there's the section on things like building heights and parking and et cetera, that apply to every zoning district. That is where the details get hammered out about stuff like that, and really beyond what Eric and I have been charged to do. But we can certainly put a draft out there.
So have people had an opportunity to review what was sent to them so we can have a discussion, or people need more time to read and absorb?
Need more time.
Kind of in your camp. I've read it once, but
Yeah, that's what I skimmed.
I think there's
Yeah.
a lot more that I need to absorb from it. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4 people are
Template's
not
great.
ready to have this.
Yeah,
It's a great start.
discussion.
The template's great.
We didn't expect
No,
a thorough discussion tonight.
and there's 150 uses, you're right. possible uses.
Yeah. And please add to that use list and maybe email if
Fine.
you think of something that's not on there.
Yeah.
Stick it on.
I didn't see museums.
Yeah.
Add it on.
Oh, no, I saw zoos.
Add it on.
I saw zoos.
Add it on.
Museums.
Let's have a petting zoo.
That's why the list is a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Old business, zoning amendments.
Finish that one.
Well, we did, except that the two things that I had worked on, Rob sent out the unedited version.
You
Yeah.
should send me the.
I've sent you the right one, and I don't know that I've seen them come back to everybody.
I don't think so.
You want me to send them to everybody?
Sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
send them and,
Right now, we're on a cruise, glide path for the first meeting in January for the hearing. Yep. Museums, it's on the last page.
So that means we got one more meeting in December
December 18th.
yeah,
Oh, I saw it.
to, yeah, so.
Cutting it close, but yeah.
okay. Any new business that anybody wants to bring up? Comments from the public? Dan? Sealy? David?
Oh,
Who's GD?
Win.
Gwen, any comment?
Sharon?
Sharon? David, you are recognized.
Hearing your discussions about your consultants, probably not an issue for any decisions tonight. But I think you need to be doing some contingency thinking when this grant does not come through.
I agree. Yep.
That's certainly an issue that we need to think about. I think we can always remain hopeful. And I think my preference, given what we have for time schedule and other things on our plate, is that we cross that bridge if and when we come to it.
I mean, basically, if we don't get the grant, then it's
All us.
all
It's all on us, yeah.
We can get done.
But
we do what we can.
right, let's invest our energy for the next 2 weeks in writing a grant. And following that, working on finalizing our zoning amendments. And, working on our template, and that sounds like a pretty full plate to me.
Plus, we've got a public hearing next time.
We do, we have a master plan public hearing, which I'm pretty confident should go fairly quickly. I don't expect to see a lot of people, but you never know.
You never know.
I thought my legislative session this morning was going to be an hour and a half. And it was over 4 hours, so you never know.
So the next meeting is the 18th, not the 4th, because tonight's the 4th.
Right.
Change that, sorry. That's
Okay.
okay.
So,
Just a point of information,
yeah. Go ahead, David.
will a preliminary draft of the master plan be available prior to the meeting for review by the public?
Is now.
It should be on the website as we speak on the edfieldleaps.org, and it keeps getting updated as we have changes. So, look at it and then check back in, say, a week. And, we're putting the updates on basically in real time.
Thank you.
And nothing's supposed to be updated after the 6th, right? That's the final, that's what they said. That's what the committee
Well,
said.
that was the date for comments, and
Okay.
it might take a few days
Okay.
to take all those comments and integrate them into the existing document
Okay,
and get them up, but I would say certainly.
At least a week to look at that ahead of time.
Let me look at the calendar. Yeah, I think, I think there will be a week at least.
Right. Liz is gonna send me what she has on Friday. Right. I'll send it Barb.
David, did you hear that?
It was not clear who was speaking over each other.
What Rob said is that our consultant is going to send, everything that she has currently by Friday.
We'll get them on.
Okay.
And then we'll get them up on the website just ASAP.
That's good. I just think it's important to have it available for review, ahead of time.
Absolutely.
I mean, the public hearing for the master plan is, any day we pick.
We did
We picked the day already,
Oh, it's already.
2 weeks.
yeah,
Oh,
the 18th. We just decided that. I mean, we can certainly change it if we want to, but I would just as soon keep that date and have our complete master plan, before the end of the year.
Somebody's watching TV, somebody.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
motion has been made and seconded. All in favor of adjournment indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned at 8:16. Thank you, people.
I
This
have
was
a
a
couple of minutes.